following program is intended for mature audiences.
Rudy's Revelation.
I'm Donald Trump, and I approve this message.
This is a conspiracy.
I kill you! I kill you! I kill you!
Hey everyone, welcome to today's episode. It is Tuesday, June 11th. Well, I think it's been confirmed. I think we all knew this from yesterday and from over the weekend that leftist organizations are funding the anarchy in the streets of Los Angeles. And I hope that Rumble's not going to screw with my live stream today, so we'll see what happens. We had some problems yesterday, as usual. So I'm going to get into these headlines and more coming up right now for today, June 11th, Tuesday. Let's get into the headline countdown. All right, well, we will start with Zero Hedge. The LA unrest poses a pressing national security threat to the U.S. And Zero Hedge goes on to say, I guess this is from Andrew Corey-Bach via Substack. This is because it concerns the country's second largest city, Los Angeles, could disrupt one of the top economic hubs and might involve in an irredentist campaign by Mexican nationalists and their U.S. leftist allies. We're going to get into the story in just a bit, but despite any national security threats, we are seeing, without a doubt, the left. It's not the people in the street. They might be even unwitting, but it is the left executing the playbook they used in 2020. It's almost exactly the same. So there's no doubt how this works out. And many people might have seen the pallets of, not bricks this time, but cinder blocks, because actually cinder blocks are lighter than carrying bricks around, so they have advanced in their tactics. Well, let's go to the story. The immediate roots are the Biden administration's de facto open borders policy that allowed millions of illegal immigrants, mostly from Ibero-America, to flood into the country. Then there's the influence of the summer 2020 unrest, which convinced activists and agitators alike, including the professionals among them, that they can riot with impunity. And finally, the Mexican cession from the mid-19th century is also relevant, with some Mexican nationalists and their U.S. leftist allies refuse to recognize as legitimate. In other words, the Southwest and the West, California going down into the southwestern states, New Mexico, Arizona, Nevada, etc., as still parts of Mexico. And so you have Mexican nationals living in California and other parts of this area of the United States thinking that this area should still or still belongs to Mexico. The article goes on to say that these factors combine to catalyze the ongoing unrest, which has seen the involvement of various NGOs, radical leftist movements, and like-minded philanthropist Neville Singham, according to the Data Republicans' viral two-part investigation on X. So there has been some crowdsourcing investigations going on in this. And it's, like I said, if they're going to the same playbook, we know the way it works. Joe Biden knows the way it works. Most people on the left know the way it works. When I was covering the Black Lives Matter street shutdowns, you saw the rich agitators, activists, paid activists roll up in their BMW, get out, go through their script on the megaphone, get all their followers to do what they want them to do, put the sub-leaders in charge, and then they get back in their BMW and drive away, even before the street shutdown took place. That would free them from any legal action, certainly. They ramp up the crowd in a professional manner. I should say they ramp up the clowns. So this is nothing new. But let's get back to this story for a moment. This has led to parallels being drawn to summer 2020's hybrid war of terror on America that was analyzed here at the time. To be sure, some of the participants in both were genuinely autonomous, which is true, but others were and operating as something larger. And we got hangups already in the friggin'. You know, I'm gonna swear off Rumble. I'll still live stream to Rumble, but I don't have a lot going on here, so I don't know why it keeps hanging up. And this happened yesterday during yesterday's stream, and I have to give people who are following me the opportunity to see a stream without it keep hanging up. So we indeed know that there's something larger going on here, and if people don't see that, and this is really the broader conspiracy, socialism is in fact a conspiracy, and people have to understand that this broader things that happen on the ground can't happen without willing participants at the top of the economic food chain. This isn't, the people on the ground think it's an organic upswelling of frustrations, blah, 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 by the working, really the non-working people. But it's not. This is organized playbook by leftists. And what they're doing is they're trying to use the unrest, politicians on the left and the media, to try to pin it on Donald Trump. And enforcing the law is by no means, in no way mean that you can break the law further. What we see, this is a color revolution tactic. It was the same thing that happened in the Maidan Revolution, the most recent color revolution that ended up flipping Ukraine from under the sphere of influence of Russia to the West, and then the CIA went to work there in the eastern part of the country. But what we have to understand is, so there are, I'm not going to implicate the government just yet, but I would suspect, but there are influential elites working to conduct another run of 2020, another color revolution in the United States, to unseat or undermine or somehow tarnish any populist movement. And that's or legitimate democracy, you could say. This is just the facts of this way it seems to be shaping up. And there are a lot of people involved here. Mind you, that color revolutions are a brainchild of think tanks in the defense industry and the CIA, etc. Who actually funds the color revolutions? You know, it's always nested in shell companies, etc. So, get back to the headlines. The National Review: fiery but mostly peaceful protests, riots, make a comeback in Los Angeles. And the National Review goes on to say, as Los Angeles rioters set fire to cars, injured law enforcement officers, blocked the 101 freeway, and damaged government vehicles over the weekend, major media outlets flipped back to their playbooks to the fiery but mostly peaceful page. Also from the National Review, LA burns again. In the coming days, you're going to see an enormous effort by the Democrats and large swaths of the media to declare that if U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement had never tried to enforce immigration laws in Los Angeles, the city would not be beset by so much widespread violence and unrest that this past weekend. Implicit in that argument is the idea that Los Angeles city and county are so primed for violence, such a powder keg of anarchic malcontents, that the U.S. government must simply throw up its hands and concede it cannot enforce immigration law there. You see, this reflects how the likes of Governor Gavin Newsom and Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass approach governing. When a task is too difficult, they just don't even make an attempt. No, you let it burn when it serves your political purpose, as Nero did. The fact here is that this is driven by immigration, particularly immigration of ne'er-do-wells. I'm not saying that all illegal immigrants that come across aren't peaceful. They just want to live a productive life. And I get all that. I'm not generalizing, putting all the eggs in one basket. But what we do have to understand is that just like what happened in Europe, you get influxes of illegal alien malcontents, and they set up shop in neighborhoods, and then those neighborhoods become no-go zones for police. Now, is the entire city of Los Angeles now a no-go zone? Apparently, there are 2 million illegal immigrants in Los Angeles, so there's a lot of work to be done there by ICE. This whole idea that ICE shouldn't exist is a ridiculous notion. I don't know where they learned this in college or where they came up with these liberal ideas, that to have a sovereign state, and by that I mean the nation state, is you have to police the borders. You have to be able to decide who comes into your country and who doesn't. For national security reasons, most particularly, but also for economic reasons. You just can't have floods of millions of poor people come into your country because they're going to weigh down the state, particularly if it has a social safety net. The other question I leave to people that are pro-illegal immigration is, what would you say if we decided over a 4-year period to let in 10 million Chinese? Or how about 10 million Russians? Would that be okay? Oh, sure, why not? Why not just dissolve the United States? The only beacon for freedom in the world, real freedom, individual freedom. People just don't understand the implications of their actions. They don't care. And like I said to my wife just the other day, they're destroying taxpayer property. Why? Because they don't pay taxes. If you would pay taxes, if you'd be a productive member of society and pay your taxes, then you'd be, or maybe you do and just don't realize that you're damaging your police cars. They're your police cars. They're your streets, your buses, your government buildings. But they probably don't pay taxes, so they don't have to worry about it. That's when an adult becomes an adult, when you realize what you're fucking paying for. Going back to Zero Hedge here, the New World Order's endgame. And we talk about this quite a bit. You have to understand the parallels between, let's say, the Chinese social credit score, CBDCs, which is central bank digital currencies, surveillance, and psychological warfare. This isn't just chaos, it's psychological warfare. Constant upheaval. Will food prices soar? Will borders lock down? Keep you jumpy, ready to grab at any stable lifeline, even if it's the global leash, the globalist leash. The New World Order feeds on this hunger, dangling supranational solution like the UN's Pact for the Future or the WEF's Great Reset as humanity's only hope. And I'm not going to go into this whole article. I just want to explain that global socialism is what they're moving towards. The problem is with socialism was devised by the elites for the only avenue for redress of grievance. So, and people want equity. The problem is we're all equally going to be poor. And so you're going to be rationed your services. You'll get your services for free, but they'll be rationed and they'll be poor. This is the problem that people don't realize. Socialism is a conspiracy. It's a scheme that was devised by the elites after the French Revolution to keep any more upstarts from turning over the apple cart, so to speak, because it was the merchant class that wanted to get rid of the monarchy so they could operate more freely, obviously, and make more money and be in charge. And that's what we have now. We have a corporate global fascism. And people don't know what it is. They talk about fascism and they think police are fascist, or your representative government in a democratic republic is fascism. That's not fascism. There's an aspect to it, of course, and that's with the College of Corporations and how they run the world. But what they're pushing for is to undermine the validity of the constitutional republic in which we live. That guarantees individual freedoms. Article goes on to say, the psychological hook is insidious. CBDC's normalized surveillance. Nothing to hide, nothing to fear. And this is always the problem with surveillance. Well, I don't care. I don't have anything to hide. Until what you believe in becomes illegal. Let's channel Carl Jung for a minute, because the New World Order's endgame is a full-on assault on your psyche. Geopolitical chaos, trade wars, CBDCs are a triple whammy against your inner self. Fear from global instability kills critical thinking. Think 2020's pandemic panic, but on steroids. Economic desperation breeds conformity. When you're broke, you're less likely to rock the boat. I wouldn't necessarily agree with that, but digital money enforces compliance, turning dissent into financial death sentence. Together, there's a psychological cage designed to make you a docile cog in a globalist machine. The reality is, most people can't critically think, and they don't understand what is motivating them to do things. You know, people are mad at Trump. Trump is your savior, for better or for worse. So if you believe in individual liberty, you know, great. If you really think Trump is a racist, fascist, you're buying into the mind control that what people do is they will sell you Gavin Newsom or other leftists, and anybody who's on the right, they'll demonize. It doesn't matter whether the person on the right is serving them or not. So if Trump is a fascist, as part of the corporate fascist cabal, then why do corporate news outlets bash Donald Trump? Let's go on with the news, though. Post-millennial mass shooting in LA as dozens arrest for theft, arson. Excuse me, I said mass shooting, I meant mass looting. What we saw in the first night was bad. What we've seen subsequent is getting increasingly worse and more violent. So what you have is the paid agitators, and they whip up the crowd to do what they do, because they don't understand that these people that are leading the riots are paid, sometimes pretty well. And then the people take advantage of the chaos and they loot. So it's a cascade of chaos. Dozens have been arrested for looting, arson, and even attempted murder, as well as other crimes in Los Angeles, as violence continued in the Deep Blue City into Sunday night. And it's already Tuesday. Riots erupted over the weekend in reaction to immigration and ICE. More news from Fox News. DOJ identifies suspect accused of assaulting federal officer as Trump vows to tough on pressure. The Trump administration warns of violent demonstrators. You can run, but you can't hide. So they identified the guy who was one of the paid leaders, which is believed to be one of the paid leaders, because he knew where the pallet of cinder blocks was. He took one of the cinder blocks, and as the Los Angeles police described, put the cinder block in his backpack, broke it up with a hammer, and then handed the chunks out to other people who were willing to commit violence. Let's go to the article. U.S. Attorney Bill Lee, identified Elpidio Reyna as a suspect who captured on video allegedly throwing rocks at federal officers in Paramount, California. The FBI initially asked the public's help by offering $50,000 cash reward for information leading to the man's arrest. He was accused of injuring a federal officer after throwing rocks at law enforcement vehicles. Probably a paid agitator, more than likely. And I believe they're going to be investigating that. The Post Millennial is reporting FBI manhunt underway for suspect in assault of federal officer during LA anti-ICE riots. If you assault a law enforcement officer, you're going to jail, period. The Federalist is reporting legal aliens violently rioting in LA is the natural consequence of democratic rule. And the story goes on to say, let's skip the past the part where Democratic leaders in most of the perfunctory way disavow the violent and lawless riot in Los Angeles, and their news media counterparts diligently repeat those disavowals for them. What we're seeing now in LA is a response. What we see now in LA is what Democrats instigate and excuse when their policies are obstructed. They're happy with it. This is how they govern, and they pretend otherwise is an assault. To pretend otherwise is an assault to even below average intelligence. Indeed. Not surprising at all. Because this isn't always a part of the left. What they do is they say, we're with the poor and working class. Then the disaffected poor and working class, who they never managed to get employed, and they know are still frustrated, will do the bidding of the politicos on the left. So that's not surprising. And what they do, the way they do that, they don't necessarily get marching orders. I guess you do if you're paid, but if you're just a willing accomplice to the socialist conspiracy, is you're told you're oppressed because the system is racist or something like that, or the system is working against you, and we're here to help you. And then when you're at your most frustrated, then they point to somebody and go, he did it. Just like a bar fight. You know, somebody gets a drink spilled on him and the guy turns around and somebody goes, he did it. And then that guy goes after the drunk malcontent goes after the guy you pointed to. It's a perfect analogy. You know, these people are frustrated and they're told, you know, ICE is coming for your abuela, and you better stop them or else they're going to arrest your whole family, which could happen, I suppose. But you got to go after them. So, and protest is one thing. Protest is legal. That's standing there with a sign, picketing. You have a bullhorn, you shout at people. But you can't disobey law enforcement. Sorry. I know firsthand. Story goes on from the Federalist. If immigration raids had not happened here, we would not have the disorder that went on last night, said Karen Bass. The immigration raids Bass referred to were multiple immigration and customs enforcement detention operations throughout the city for the purpose of apprehending migrants residing in the U.S. illegally. And to add that there were criminal aliens. Have some people been caught up in the sweep that didn't commit crimes except for coming here illegally? Perhaps. But just like Abrego Garcia, he's here illegally. Doesn't matter if he committed a crime or not. Because some people get under the impression in their head is that because the enforcement operations are starting with the most egregious lawbreakers, that's the only people that the law applies to. That's not how it works. All people who came here without going to a port of entry and declaring asylum should be removed. It's the fact that Joe Biden allowed these people to claim asylum, and there's other ways to go about doing it. All right, let's go on to the next headline. Just the News, exclusive FBI's Patel says Bureau investigating funding behind anti-ICE riots in L.A. Kash Patel told Just the News that the Bureau is investigating the money trail behind those organizing and promoting the demonstration spreading across the country. The FBI is investigating any and all monetary connections responsible for these riots. And of course, after largely peaceful demonstrations in response to several immigration raids in Los Angeles last week, the Immigration and ICE and Customs Enforcement protests escalated over the weekend to include more than 1,000 rioters, assaulting immigration officers, burning self-driving taxis, looting, closing down highways, and throwing concrete rocks at law enforcement officers and their vehicles. And as we see, now that these are spreading across the country, it's the same thing that happened in 2020. What they'll do is they'll start looking at those connections between the financial and logistic networks that these people depend on to create these, I would say, planned disturbances or augmented disturbances. And that was former FBI Executive Assistant Director Chris Pihota. And that's basically what happens. There might be a legitimate or organic uprising, and then the paired ne'er-do-wells come in from behind and escalate it into violent protests. Because what they're looking to do is, it's an old communist tactic. It's called agitprop. And so what you do is you agitate law enforcement until they take physical action against you, and then you film it. And then you use that as propaganda, say, see, the state is fascist, they're coming after us, blah, blah, blah. BJ Media is reporting here's who really denied National Guard troops on January 6th, and it wasn't Trump. We all know this. The tired lie that Trump refused to send National Guard to the Capitol on January 6th. He did recommend it. Who denied it? It was actually the House Sergeant at Arms, Paul Irving, saying Nancy Pelosi would never go for it. Not only that, but D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser had requested limited National Guard troops to help with traffic control, but a day before, she sent a letter to the Pentagon and said, you know what, never mind. Then, as the riot was going on, the Capitol Police Board didn't approve National Guard till 2:08 p.m. And even then, the Pentagon stalled senior military officials, including Lieutenant General Charles Flynn and Lieutenant General Walter Piatt, reportedly objected to the optics of deploying troops to the Capitol Mall. They let it burn. So you see where I'm getting at here? I mean, they do this all the time. They let it burn. They say, it's not our fault. We're for you. We're with you. We understand your frustration. It's Trump's fault. The facts are clear. Trump authorized the troops, National Guard troops on January 6th. Sund, the Capitol Police head, requested help, and yet Democrat leaders and Pentagon officials blocked or delayed them at every step. Why? Because it was a Fedsurrection. They were, again, same principle, different players. Large group of people incensed, protest, agitators are put into the crowd to whip up the crowd and then direct the crowd's anger at, in this case, and in many other cases, physical property, because they don't want deaths, obviously. Maybe they wanted some deaths. Maybe Ashley Babbitt was the sacrificial lamb to help it along, but they point people to attack property. The people attack the property, and then they show that on the news. And the people on the news do something similar to the audience, and they go, "You're incensed." It's that guy. It's easy psychological manipulation, right? The thing is, people get emotion and they want to act or they want to blame immediately as soon as they get emotional. The best thing to do is if you get emotional about something, great, be angry, stomp your feet, yell, swear, do whatever, but calm down before you do anything and try to realize who's really to blame and who's been suckered into this. Just the News is reporting Representative Mark Harris accuses Gavin Newsom of exploiting LA riots for a big media moment. He said Governor Newsom is making unwise decisions while Los Angeles breaks out in riots. If the governor had a lick of sense, he would simply step up and say, "We're not going to tolerate this for our own state," and call the National Guard into account for himself. But instead, he wanting to somehow pick a fight with the president. He wanted to create some sort of big media moment for himself. I disagree. By the way, I just remembered that, again, another article has slipped through my little fingers here. Very important one. I hope it's in here, but I didn't see it when I was preparing for the show today. Is that New York Mayor Eric Adams, big headline in the New York Post, said whatever's happening in LA will in no way, shape, or form be tolerated in the city of New York. And why that article disappears is always the most important article, because he's a Democrat mayor in the largest city in the country saying that we're not going to let this happen. Oh, he's in league with Trump. Now he owes Trump to get off of the federal indictment that he was under because he told the Biden administration to stop allowing illegal immigrants to be able to cross the borders in such numbers. Another Democrat speaks out. Fetterman calls out anarchy in LA, noting that Dems forfeit moral high ground by failing to decry violence. The maverick Democrats' post on X earned significant attention, as it should. As it should. Did everybody see this? I want to make sure that everybody saw this. I'm liking Fetterman. I just, like I said, it means less which party you belong to, whether you want to spend money or not spend money or whatever, or what your policy priorities are. But if you act like you live under a rock and you don't know what's going on in the world, or you project your subjective thinking onto other people, it's mind control. You got no way forward, because people are becoming hip to the trick. They know. They're seeing this again. They saw what happened in 2020 and they didn't like it in 2020, and they thought that was a little more legitimate, right? But it's only the diehard blue Kool-Aid drinking knuckleheads out there who think that the cops are there to hurt people. Like I said, if you pay taxes, particularly property taxes, that you are paying for this. You are paying for your police force, et cetera, et cetera. All right, we're going to go to this one now. VDH. Hold on. Victor Davis Hanson said Gavin Newsom is wrong on the wrong side of the LA riots, as we just heard from John Fetterman. Sorry, I had to get my coffee back. So let's go to the Just the News article. Victor Davis Hanson hosted the Victor David Hanson Show. He's a Stanford professor and highly regarded intellectual, conservative intellectual, I would say, highlights the blunders Gavin Newsom has made during the last few days of the Los Angeles riots. SurveyMonkey has 30 aggregate polls, and they say that Gavin Newsom is polling at 27%. We just saw a presidential poll. 2% of the Democratic Party thinks he should be the 2028 nominee. He's on the wrong side of the issue, indeed. Let's move to PJ Media. You might have heard this. SEIU union boss charged with impeding LA ICE bust. But how did he know about it in the first place? The article goes on to say, how did the Democrat union bagman know that the FBI and the DHS officers were enforcing a criminal search warrant at LA clothing manufacturer on Friday? Seems that the union, the CHIRLA, and the Los Angeles Rapid Response Network, LARRN, snitch line reporting men in military garb paid off. At least that's what it looks like from the charging documents against SEIU executive and Democrat moneyman David Herda. So David Herda is a well-known union guy in Los Angeles, a social organizer. And they have this thing, which is the Los Angeles Rapid Response Network, which is a snitch line. If you see ICE raids or whatever, you're supposed to call it in. It's used all the time for a variety of different police actions that they call in, and then what they do is they mob these people. And as far as I'm concerned, everybody who interferes with police action should be arrested. You can stand at a distance and document things by phone, but getting in the way of law enforcement, again, like I said, you're undermining the efforts of your taxpayer dollars. But people don't care about that. The Daily Beast says Kristi Noem issues chilling warning to LA protesters. We're coming in and doing what the president has said that he's going to do, she told Fox News Hannity. The more that people conduct violence against law enforcement officer, boy, we're going to hit them back, and we're going to hit them back harder than we ever have before. And I'm kind of happy about that. And I'm not some law enforcement sycophant. I've been on the other side of the law plenty of times. But then when you get older, you buy a house, if you have the means to do so, or you start paying taxes, or you live in a community that might or might not be plagued with crime or illegality, you want to be able to depend on the police. Now, I don't trust the police, but why do I need to fight somebody because of their illegality? I should just let it go if it affects my life. I'm not going to let it go. Someone's breaking the law and it's affecting me directly. I'm going to call the police. Oh, you're snitching. See, people don't understand the way it works is you're supposed to be given an opportunity to move up the economic ladder in your life if you choose to do so. And that should be protected. That's what you're paying taxes for. To give the opportunity for your children to become educated and the opportunity for you to live in peace and live unaccosted. The American Spectator is reporting Trump is racking up court victories despite delusions of grandeur at the district court level. The White House is winning. Of course, we know this. And I said this plenty times. Plenty of times. The Trump administration is accumulating significant catalog of appeals court and SCOTUS victories. Last Friday alone, 3 more wins were added to the list. The D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals ruled that the White House may exclude... Excuse me there. That is my phone with some scam calling in. The D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals ruled that the White House may exclude AP from its press pool, while SCOTUS stayed a district court requiring DOJ to heed a Freedom of Information Act request and ruled that it can access Social Security Administration records. Everything that Trump is doing is within the law, particularly because of the lawfare he faced and the scrutiny he faced in his first term. Some of it, most of it, or you could even say all of it, was unwarranted, that he is trying to cross every T and dot every I. Now, could some of these things be debated in a court of law? Sure. But the pundits on the news and other left-wing politicians going, what he's doing is illegal, he's corrupt. They have no evidence to verify any of that. That's just their assertion. And to go on national television like my senator, the newly bearded Chris Murphy, says, the things that are coming out of his mouth are just fiction. Now, that could be what he subjectively believes, but there's no objective evidence to suggest that what he's talking about is true. Donald Trump is not corrupt. As he said before, he's trying to weed out the bureaucratic liberal order, the deep state, so to speak, that is undermining the sovereignty and the liberty of the individual and of the U.S. as a nation state. And that's been going on for some time because the College of Corporations is trying to devise a supranational governing body globally. So literally, the corporations will effectively own the world by governing the world through administrative policies. See, it's the administrator that you have to worry about, not necessarily the elected politician. So when people are in positions of authority, whether it's judicial, you want to talk about fascism. So what fascism is when pillars of power or authority work together to achieve common aims. So whether it's the judicial authority, congressional authority, or other government authority, executive authority, state authority, medical authority, academic authority. You understand what I'm saying? So when you have these rods of authority working together for policy achievement, and they do that by using their authority. So it's not just wanting it, it's when they execute their authority in such a way, like when you have district attorneys in all sorts of different states filing disparate charges against Donald Trump to keep him from running for president again. Because they know he was, they looked at the polling, they know he was going to win. Story goes on to say, on May 30th, the Supreme Court stated district court ruling that DHS Secretary Kristi Noem couldn't revoke former President Biden's parole of 500,000 non-citizens, illegal immigrants. On May 29th, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Federal Court stayed the U.S. Trade Court ruling that President Trump's tariffs are somehow unlawful. But on May 22nd, SCOTUS stayed the district court order reinstating 2 Biden administration officials fired by Trump. On May 19th, SCOTUS stayed a district court ruling that Secretary Noem does not possess the legal authority to terminate the temporary protected status of 350 Venezuelan non-citizens. And it goes on and on and on. But do they? And they do. The fact that certain things, SCOTUS stated district court ruling. So it's all the district court ruling that says that the administration doesn't have the power to do what it has the power to do. And that's the only power the district courts have, is to able to stay what the administration is doing. They don't have the power to rule on it. That's up to the Supreme Court. And in a lot of these cases, the Supreme Court didn't even rule on it. They just stayed the stay. The post-millennial International World Pride attendance may way lower than expected. We anticipated bookings to be much higher at this time for the World Pride, and we know that the climate, the concern that folks internationally to travel to the United States is real, that people are afraid. That's right. Don't go to the United States because, there's no gay rights or something. Ridiculous. It is ridiculous, and that's what they go on to say, is that they were afraid that said international numbers were noticeably down, with some would-be attendees opting not to travel to the United States in protest of President Donald Trump's policies, of fear of harassment, that the government is going to harass people who are homosexual. As I tell people all the time, it's not white rights or male rights. Everybody has the same individual rights. And this is what I tell people all the time under union contracts. Read the contract, then you know what your rights are, and then you can exercise your rights. I had people going, why does he get to do that? Because it's your right to do. So the thing is your rights are there. You might have to defend your rights. You might feel intimidated not to exercise your rights, but you can. And the government isn't going to arrest you for exercising your rights. Like in LA, if you're sitting there, if you're protesting, but when it's called an illegal gathering and they're asked to disperse and you don't listen to police, you're going to be arrested. And who would want their protest to turn into a riot? The Hill is reporting Democratic frustration reaches boiling point over David Hogg, and you might have heard new DNC chair Ken Martin venting his frustration with Hogg, who has come under fire from some within the party for his efforts to oust certain incumbents while serving as DNC vice chair. Well, what are they trying to do? David Hogg is one of the biggest distractions we have ever seen in our party, but they elected him, and now they want to undo the Democratic election of David Hogg. Why does that not surprise me? Because the Democrat Party doesn't believe in the process of democracy. They hide behind these ideas that seem laudable, but they don't support them in any real sense. Because the liberal order doesn't. The liberal order is what it is. Liberal order is about borrowing money, states borrowing money from banks. So the banks, which are the biggest corporations, make money. That's what it means. Keep the money flowing at a high velocity. And so people that invest and the corporations themselves can make money. That's what the liberal order is. And whatever gets in the way of that has to be removed, even if it's the democratic process. Washington Post is reporting Islam grows, Christianity slips as a share of the world's population, survey finds. Even as the overall number of Christians counted as one group across denominations continued to climb to 2.3 billion, the religion's share of the world's population decreased by 1.8 percentage points to 28.8%. The Muslim population, on the other hand, has increased 1.8% percentage points to 25.6%, according to the report. I have no problems with people doing whatever they want to do, whatever religion they want. But it's a dichotomy there. If you've ever noticed that if something is successful all of a sudden, might take a couple hundred years or a few hundred years, but all of a sudden, there's a competitor that rises up out of nothing. So Christianity, well, organized Christianity, 500 years after the canoning of the Bible, I guess. After that happened, 500 years later, there was a new book, and it was the Quran. And now the Christians had a book, and now we got a book. And of course, they dispute Christianity, which is, although the Muslims, Islam looks at Jesus as a prophet, they don't think he's the Son of God. Certainly debatable. But the reason I brought up that article is because the New York Post had this inside the massive Telegram group chats in the U.S. that Hamas is trying to radicalize with daily propaganda. Have text from this? Yeah. Telegram group chats with hundreds of thousands of subscribers are posting daily propaganda directly from Hamas and potentially radicalizing anti-Israel activists in America. Not it potentially. The Post monitored two major English language Telegram networks, Resistant News Network and Gaza Now in English, with more than 100,000 and 200,000 subscribers respectively. Over the past week, and observed dozens of daily updates purporting to be from spokespeople of Hamas, Hezbollah, and terrorist military brigades. Dude, I mean, this is no different than how the CIA used Twitter for the Arab Spring. If you're on social media, don't be a moron. All right? You want to communicate with real life friends over social media? Great. All right. But other Facebook friends, people you've never met before, might not be real. They could be sock puppets, could be AI. And in a lot of instances, who knows who's delivering these edicts over social media, whether it's transgenderism related or it's anti-Israel, anti-Semitic related, or if it's anti-ICE related. It's, you know how they get hundreds of thousands of people or thousands of people in the case of LA into the streets. It's because you sign up to a network, a social media network of folks, group chat, whatever, and then they go, alert, get down to so-and-so right away and help protest the terrible, abduction of Abuela, who was, all she was doing was washing her clothes, and ICE came in and kicked her in the head, and who knows what they say. But that's the reality. If you're listening to people on social media who may or not even be real, and then you're going out, if you're an activist and you're going to take action, keep drinking the Kool-Aid. All right? You're listening to a computer effectively tell you what to do. Come on. Get on the phone and talk to somebody or go see somebody in person. New York Post is reporting that 113 House Democrats vote against GOP resolution denouncing the anti-Semitic terrorist attack in Colorado. Representative Dan Goldman, that cock, Democrat from New York, who is Jewish and voted no on the resolution, argued on the House floor that the measure was being put forward to simply score political points. Yeah, you don't want to denounce a terrorist attack where an Egyptian man who was in the country illegally wanted to burn Jews. But God forbid some Scottish guy or English guy is making a joke with his dog Heiling Hitler or something like that. He's got to go to prison. But people don't want to vote on a resolution condemning a terrorist attack. It just shows you where the Democratic Party is. Keep digging. Keep digging the hole. Gavin Newsom and Dan Goldberg, keep digging. New York Post is also reporting Islamist terror leader calls for Trump J.D. Vance assassination over pro-Israel views and disturbing video. Take revenge. Saeed bin Atef al-Awlaki, the new leader of Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, issued a disturbing call in a propaganda video released on Sunday as he encouraged Muslims in the U.S. to take revenge. Okay, so again, this guy's supposed to be a terrorist leader of Al-Qaeda. Well, Al-Qaeda is a construct of the CIA. So whether this guy is a witting accomplice, a non-witting accomplice of the CIA, or is just being handled or manipulated by the CIA, I mean, come on. There's a call to take out Trump. Well, Thomas Crooks wasn't a member of the Al-Qaeda. Ryan Ralph wasn't a member of Al-Qaeda. And so they're just getting more people on the bandwagon to try to take out Trump. I mean, this is transparent, plain as day. You might have heard this story. Another Chinese scientist from Wuhan charged with smuggling illegal biological material into the U.S. This person, Han, arrived at the U.S. border. Officials discovered Han sent 4 packages that contained biological material related to roundworms. You might have heard this too. Kennedy removes all CDC vaccine panel experts. The U.S. Health Secretary chose to retire members of the committee that makes significant decisions about who receives immunizations, including vaccines for children. And you know what the problem is here? Is because they didn't want to go along with not recommending, because if they recommend a vaccine, then it goes on the schedule for schools. So if they recommended the COVID vaccine, which they kept pushing to do, RFK Jr. just fired them all. Because there's no scientific evidence that says that the COVID vaccine would be very effective if it was administered en masse to school children. The CDC's vaccine advisors wield enormous influence. They do. They carefully review data on vaccines, debate the evidence, I don't know about that, and vote on who should get shots and when. Insurance companies and government programs like Medicaid are required to cover the vaccines recommended by the panel. So it's a boon for the pharmaceutical industry if you get a thumbs up from the panel. Because not only the government, but other people that are privately insured, the pharmaceutical industries get their check. Senator Doc Marshall, gain-of-function research was Fauci's baby. Indeed it was. The New York Post, RFK Jr.'s oust CDC Vaccine Advisory Committee. I already went over that. The Biden-appointed group that made recommendations on the necessity of the use of vaccines in the first series of sweeping changes. Yeah. Just the News reports Army pilot facing separation from military after denied promotion over COVID vaccine mandate. And he didn't even say he wouldn't get the COVID vaccine. He just wanted to wait. He asked questions about the lawfulness of the mandate. Well, in the military, you don't have your rights. Inquiring about religious accommodation requests that they didn't offer. And he wanted to wait 90 days before getting the shot. If you're in the Army and you disobey a direct order, sorry. That's why I never went into the military, although I was actively recruited. New York Times, Meta is creating a new AI lab to pursue superintelligence. The new lab. This is the point I'm trying to make here. Staying in the race is crucial for Meta, Google, Amazon, and Microsoft, with the technology likely to be future for the industry. $13 billion in Microsoft pumped into OpenAI. Amazon has plowed $8 billion into the AI startup Anthropic. The behemoths also spent millions to hire employees. Google agreed to pay $3 billion to license technology and hire technologists and executives from Character AI. Superintelligence is regarded by leading research to be the futuristic goal of AI development. OpenAI, Google, and others have said that the immediate aim is to build artificial general intelligence, or AGI, shorthand for a machine that can do anything a human could do, with the ambition of no clear path to success. But superintelligence, if it can be developed, would go way beyond AGI in its power, because there's no limit to how much smarter machine can be than humans, theoretically. So there lies the problem, that the elites are pumping money into this to devise this to make humans obsolete, plus robotics. Moving a little more quickly now, Vox is reporting AI can now stalk you with just a single vacation photo. Artificial intelligence could weaponize the data we've been sharing for decades. Talking about this, and then just saying one picture of this guy's, the author's son on a beach. Which beach? OpenAI's pinpointed it in just one picture, Marina State Beach in Monterey Bay, where my family went on vacation. See, most people, even if you switch off your location, which usually geotags the photo, it's embedded in the code of the photo. And so most computers will know where the photo is anyway. But now OpenAI could look at the general landscape and geography and figure out where it is. And Vox goes on to say that AI makes tasks that would previously have required serious effort by a large team into trivial ones. In other words, they just figure it out to nail somebody's location down. Zero hedge, China needs for U.S. chemicals greater than U.S. needs for rare earths. That's true, and it just shows that Chinese exports, petrochemicals that have exported to China has quadrupled, probably fentanyl as well. And then the next article from Zero Hedge, China is deliberately using fentanyl to kneecap the U.S. It's just payback for the opium wars. They're using the same strategy that the British did in the 19th century in China to basically just space out, to string out, to get the Chinese strung out so they couldn't form a resistance to the British. Barron fearing arrest, Argentina's Kirchner urges backers to organize. If you don't know who this person is, Christina Kirchner on Monday urged supporters to organize as she faces possible arrest. Kirchner was sentenced to 6 years imprisonment for fraud in awarding the tenders of public works to her own term of presidency. So it's very similar in Argentina, where Milei is now president and he's cleaning things up there. Is the same thing that happened in Brazil, but now Lula's back in power. You have a communist that takes power. They run the economy into the ground. They take money for themselves. They outlaw opposition. And then eventually the populace comes to their senses and these people are arrested. Like Lula was arrested and barred from running for office. But then in Brazil, they took the bar away from him running for office. He ran in a rigged election against Bolsonaro and won. Miraculously, the same thing happened, that the population of Brazil protested this obviously rigged election, and he squashed the protest, put Bolsonaro in prison, like the same thing like they wanted to do for Trump. So Kirchner is trying to make a comeback in politics in Argentina. We'll see if that happens or not. Did I go over? A couple minutes. Thanks for joining me today. Don't forget to engage the channel. Like, subscribe, leave a comment, give me a thumbs up, click that notification bell. Thanks for joining me today. Stay tuned tonight for an episode 116 of Tuesdays with Perry. We're going to discuss quite a bit of different things, riots in LA, obviously, what's going on in Gaza, and much, much more. So stay tuned for that. Remember, you're under attack biologically and psychologically, so stay hip to the trick. And hopefully I'll see you tonight. If not, I'll see you tomorrow. Don't forget to join me every day, Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. live on Rumble. Soon to be YouTube, if these streaming glitches don't fix themselves. Anyway, thanks for joining me today. Respect.
You're crazy. You're crazy, man. You're crazy. I like you. But you're crazy.
I'm an American. I have rights.
The new world order.